Today's video, I'm going to show you how to create this cool little cutout text effect using the Divi theme. Now, this does have a few limitations, this effect, but I'm going to explain that as we go and you'll understand how it works and therefore what you can and can't do with this effect. So, what we need to do is actually get into a page to open up the visual builder. So, what you need to do is either create a new page or open an existing page and go Enable Visual Builder. And we're going to open up that page and get started. I'm going to just start from scratch. Now you can do this with a standard row. You can also use a full width row or anything like that. The idea is everything we put into the object goes over the top is going to sort of have that effect. So it's probably best suited to actually a full width row and say a full width header or something like that, but you can play with it a little bit differently if you want to. So I'm going to go plus here and add a full width row, but I'm not going to add a module just yet. I'm going to close that down and I'm going to delete this row. What I'm going to do is the image I want to be cut to show through the cutout text, I'm going to make a background of the row. So I click on the row and where the little cog is here, I click that there. Where it says background, I'm going to open that up and I'm actually going to choose the background color just for a moment. Just going to zoom out so we can see a bit better. Blue is not necessarily the color of the image, but it'll do for now. I'm going to choose my background image and go add background image here. You can either upload a file. I've found this image I think will do the job pretty nicely. I go upload image. And I want it to be either relatively dark or relatively light, depending on what method I prefer, because I'm going to show you two different effects with this. So I've got this here. I can even turn on parallax if I want it to be a little extra fancy, which I will do just for the sake of it. Although we'll come back to that because it may not work. I'm done with that now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into here and add a full width header. And you see the header has a background color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this background color to white. For this effect to work the way it sort of is demonstrated here, it'll need to be either 100% white or 100% black, but you can use some colors in between, but there might be some transparency involved. But I made the background of this area white. I'm going to go into the text area. I'm just going to delete a lot of this text so we can focus on what we're looking at here. I'm going to go into the design tab, and where I have text, I need to make the text black. So it's black on white so it can be read. So I'm going to go text color, dark. Now I'm going to do a few things just to make this a little bit more visual. So I'm going to center the text and I'm going to go down to title text, and it looks best when you have a really bold font. So I'm going to go to ultra bold, and I might even just make the letter spacing -1 so the letters are a little closer together. And I'm going to make the text size a bit bigger as well. So we've got some pretty big text there because as we add in imagery, it can be more difficult to read that text depending on sort of how much sort of light and contrast there is within the image. But for now, we've got this here, and I'm going to leave the button there so you can understand some of the limitation as we do this. But I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to type in cutout text effect in Divi. So we've got our text there, and all we're going to do is, because we have a white background with black text, I'm going to go back into the design tab, scroll right down to filters, and we have a blend mode here. So I can actually choose a mode which cuts out the black or levels of black throughout that document. So I'll show you what I mean in a minute. If I go to screen, it will keep it will sort of lighten the image. So I've got anything that's white will be 100% white, anything that's black will be 100% transparent, anything that's gray will be somewhere in between. So I choose screen and we get this little cutout effect here. You may also notice it on the button because the button has some black around it, and you'll notice the green is a bit, actually kind of still works. But if I go into my title, and I'll show you what I mean by this, because maybe that's a bit difficult to read, I can go into my title text, and at the moment, because it just automatically had it on black even though it had white there, if I click on this black and I make it lighter, you'll notice that it actually sort of like fades away a little bit because it becomes semi-transparent. So at the moment, that's actually pretty easy to read. Now, if I go into the background, I'm actually testing this. I haven't tested this yet. If I go, so I'm in the full width header, so we're going to actually tick to X out of that. And we've got our cutout text effect here. but I'm going to click on the actual full width header, not the module. I'm going to go to the cog, go to background, and this may not work, but I'm going to add a parallax effect. And it did work. So now, as we scroll, we get this cool moving background in our text. But it's actually a little bit difficult to read now, which is a bit of a bummer. So what we're going to do, click on this full width header again. Once again, we're not going into the module. We're going into the actual row, the cog setting here. And with the background, we can actually add a gradient over the top of the image just to take some of the sting out of it so the white doesn't sort of conflict with the text. So I click on background gradient. Before I add this gradient, I'll go to add gradient. I'm going to come down the bottom and choose place gradient above background image and select yes. Now you see we have the full gradient here, but we don't necessarily want that. What I can do is choose this blue color here, maybe make it a bit darker, and then I want to make it semi-transparent. So maybe about somewhere where you feel it looks best. And with the green, I can choose a darker green again, but make it a lot more transparent. So now you can see if I toggle this here, if I turn that off, you can see how difficult this is to read. When I turn it on, it just darkens it a bit and brings out the image. And you can still see there's a little bit coming through the green color there. So it affects everything in the row. But that is essentially how you create the effect. Now you're not just stuck with this. If you have a white background with black text, we set the blend mode to screen. However, if I go back into this module, first thing I'm going to do is go into the background again. I'm just going to turn off this gradient here by turning that off. And I'm going to change this image to something bright because we're going to change the background to black and the text to white. So I'm going to choose a background image that is brighter, such as this. Click upload an image. And we can still kind of read it there. It's actually not too bad. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into the module settings by clicking on what is normally the gray box. It hovers up. You'll see it's transparent. But I click on the cog symbol. And now I go into the background and I make it black. And you can see it's 100% transparent because I've still got it set to screen. But if I go into design here and change the title text to white, we can see pretty much almost normally as we would be able to see with a little bit of a transparency. But when I go down to filters, down here, and scroll down to blend mode, I can turn it to multiply, which has the opposite effect. So now we get black with a cutout background where the white text is. Now you can also play, there's a few other ones here you can try, such as darken, which doesn't have quite as nice of an effect, but say color burn. If you're familiar with Photoshop, you'll find you can play with the transparency and get some cool effects that way. There's also say difference if you wanted something completely different looking. I actually recommend trying these out to see if you find any effects that you like. But in essence, the cutout effect is done, well, the way I do it is by using the black and white to mask or cut out these areas, switching between multiply or screen in order to cut out that text. So that's essentially the video for today. Now, one thing I will add before I do quickly wrap up is if you decide you don't necessarily want it to be full width, you can go into your module settings, go into design and spacing, and we can add a margin of say 50, 50, 50, 50. And it sort of has added, unfortunately, it hasn't really worked on the top and bottom. But if you do this on something that's not a full screen, a full width header, then you can actually get a nice boxed effect. So once again, if I add some space around that by going to design and spacing for the row itself and add some padding at the top and bottom, we can get this nice box effect. So as I scroll, the text in the background moves there. So that is pretty much it. I've tried to explain as much as I could with that, but there are limitations, as I said, because anything in this area, once I set that blend effect, it becomes affected. So you can see how this is semi-transparent, but you may find that actually works for you or not. Another thing you can do is simply add the text in one area with a black background and then add another module underneath that's the same color. Make sure there's no space in between the two and marry them up if you decide you don't want to do that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was useful to you. Just something a little bit different. But yeah, let me know how you go. And if you have heard of any other cool effects like that, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear about anything else. I just thought this one was pretty nifty. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you again soon.